How's it going, everyone? I hope you're all having a wonderful day. In this week's build, we're going to be refinishing this well-loved coffee table into this, complete with rhombus steel legs. Let's get started. So this slab was provided to me by a client, and they stated to me that it has a lot of sentimental value to them, and they're looking to retain as much of the natural imperfections as possible, however refinish the surfaces to make sure that it is once again serviceable. I wanted to use this as an opportunity to not only discuss the furniture refinishing process, but also this kind of gives us a insight into the future, right, of what happens to a piece of furniture after we build them. Oftentimes we don't necessarily get to see the end result of the piece aging over time. So I wanted to talk about some of the things to keep in mind with this refinishing process when it comes to making brand new furnitures as well. First thing you want to do is apply finishes to both the top as well as the underside of your tabletops. This applies to both refinishing projects as well as brand new projects, and the reason for it is wood movement. So wood expands and contracts seasonally with respect to moisture content in the environment. So in the summertime, there's a little bit more humidity, the wood will swell up and expand a little bit bigger than it normally is in the wintertime when there's less humidity and it shrinks. This is a natural process for wood, and as a woodworker, you want to be respectful of this natural process and understand this process and work that into your design. Because if you do not, nature will win every single time and you'll have a ruined project in your hands. So upon initial inspection of this slab, I realized that it's not terribly flat. I hope you can see here, there's a little bit of low spot, there's some bit of a high spot here, and this sort of lines up with the high spot. Of course this is a cookie slab, so it's like a cross-section cut of the tree, and this probably is on the root side of it. So that doesn't help our case because there's a pith in the middle, and that always, checks a little funny sometimes. But if you look at the underside of this, you'll notice that, it's not finished. And I suspect the fact that this underside is not finished is a major contributor to all of the checking that has occurred over time and made this slab a little bit less flat than we would want it to be. Normally with the slab in this condition, I would resurface both the top and the bottom with a router slide to be perfectly flat. However, the client wants to retain as much of the natural imperfection as possible. They just want the surface to be reserviceable. So we're going to leave it as is, and I'm going to start off by removing some of the hardware that was used to fixate the legs, and then we can go ahead and get sanding. Because this particular slab is a cookie, which means it's essentially a cross-section cut off of a tree, effectively the entire top surface is made out of end grain. So sanding this is a little bit more challenging than your typical face grain or edge grain piece of wood. So in this case, I'm starting with an 80 grade paper, which is a little bit more aggressive, and I'm using the aggressive Rotex mode on my sander to be able to remove as much material as quickly as possible. I can then progressively move up to 120, 150, 180, possibly 220 if needed, but with end grain pieces I find that going to 220 isn't always necessary. For most furniture refinishing projects, you want to start somewhere at 120 and then move up from there. This is especially true if you're working with a piece of furniture that has veneer on top, which is effectively a thin layer of wood on top that is kind of in like a sheet, and it's sandwiched with another medium. So it could be MDF, it could be plywood, it could be really another piece of hardwood, doesn't really matter. What matters is that there's a thin layer at top, and you want to be mindful of that, because if you use an aggressive piece of paper like 80 grit, you can burn through that very quickly and ruin the project. So start with something like 120, maybe even 150, and then get a feel for it and move up from there. Right, he is still sanding. So I wanted to take a quick moment to really thank you guys. I've been doing YouTube for about 5.5 months maybe now, and I've got 500, I don't think I've hit quite 500 yet, but I've got about 500 folks who has subscribed to this channel, and there are many more of you who come in, watch my videos, and I know I don't say it enough. I greatly appreciate all of your support, and every single like, comment, and subscription truly does help motivate me, helps the channel to keep going and keep making more and more videos. So thank you so much for all of your support that you've shown me thus far. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Are you done? they're done? Because I finished the whole monologue. I made these folks watch a sanding single sequence for like, I don't know how many minutes. Okay. Alright. For finishing, I'm using nitrocellulose lacquer using a HVLP spray gun. I feel like I always encourage you guys to apply lacquer outdoors whenever possible, and I had the honest intentions of showing you that today, but unfortunately it's raining outside, so we're gonna stay inside. However, if you're applying lacquer outdoors, make sure the temperatures aren't too crazy on the higher end and there's no direct sun exposure, because otherwise the lacquer will get very hot and it'll bubble up and ruin your project. After the finish has dried overnight, you can consider this project to be complete. However, because my shop is usually dusty when I'm working in here, there's a good chance that a small amount of sawdust has landed onto the surface as it cured. So it's not the smoothest surface. And so to help bring it to a consistent finish, I'm going to sand it with a 400 grit paper very, very lightly and then rub it with steel wool. This makes the surface very smooth, however very cloudy. And to mitigate that, I use the automotive buffing compound with a pad and buff the surface into a smooth, glossy finish. With the tabletop completed, we can now flip it over to attach the legs. This is the Rockler trapezoid coffee table leg that I purchased from their website, and while it is a very well made product, I do wish there were two things that were a little different about it. I wish they would have welded all of the seams very well as opposed to leaving them kind of exposed and tack welding in most of the critical parts. In addition, for all of the fastening holes, I wish they were done more oblonged and oversized to allow for wood movement. We can then use the holes to mark the positioning of our threaded inserts, drill the hole, and then drive the inserts in, and finally we can drive the bolts to fix the legs to the top. Well, that's all from me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, hit the thumbs up button below. Consider subscribing to the channel if you're not a subscriber already. Thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate your support, and I will see you on the next one.